The views and opinions expressed in Unheard Crimes are exclusively those of the host. All parties mentioned are innocent until proven guilty. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Unheard Crimes. I'm your host, Nicole, and I hope you guys are having a great week. Unheard Crimes is a place where we sit down and discuss cases involving Black men, women, and children. Welcome back, you guys. I hope you guys had a great week. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving holiday. I kept it real simple this year. My dad and my daughter went to go visit my brother and my little niece who moved a couple years ago, so it was like their first Thanksgiving or holiday really spending time with each other, so that was nice. I just did a little bit of cooking, something real simple, and I watched football, so what is not better than that? This week we'll be discussing the missing person case of Lynn Smith. This case takes place on December 4th, 1985 in Hot Springs, Arkansas. A little background on Lynn was she was born on October 12, 1969. Jeffery Lynn Smith, who went by her middle name Lynn, was a beautiful, bright 16-year-old. Lynn's name has an interesting background to it. Lynn's mother, Clarice, worked for former President Bill Clinton's family as a maid. Bill's mother, Virginia, was married to a man named Jeffery Dwyer at the time. Clarice has said that Virginia and Jeff were unable to have any more kids of their own, and they thought it would be a nice gesture if Clarice, who was pregnant with Lynn at the time, would name her Jeffery. When Clarice gave birth to Lynn, she originally had picked out and wanted to name her Shirley. But Virginia and Jeff's feelings were obviously hurt, so she went with the original name as Jeffery. Lynn just turned 16, and for her birthday, she was gifted an opal ring from her parents. Since the day that she received the ring, she cherished that ring. Her sister Lisa said, quote, "Lynn protected that ring as if it was one of those crown jewels of England, and she rarely took it off," end quote. On December 4th, 1985, it was a normal day for Lynn. She went to school wearing pink pants, a brown jacket, and tan shoes. After school, Lynn would usually leave school with her boyfriend at the time, Frank Hanna, and a friend named Lisa, not to be confused with her sister. During this time, reports say that Lynn was in a violent relationship with Frank, and at the time that she disappeared, she was trying to end that relationship. As the group approached the intersection of Crescent Street and Silver Street, the group was only a few blocks away from Lynn's home. As the group continued to walk, Lynn's aunt saw them as she was driving. She stopped the car and asked them if they wanted a ride the rest of the way. The group responded that no, they were fine. Lynn's aunt said okay and continued to drive down the street. As she was driving, she looked in the rearview mirror and she could still see the group walking. During this time, Lisa, Lynn's friend, parted ways from the couple. Lisa would tell Lynn's sister years later, quote, "I left. I parted ways with them and she was heading home. They just kept walking," end quote. As stated before, Lynn was only a few blocks away from her home, but after being seen by her aunt, she was never seen again. After Lynn never made it home and she didn't return in the hours after, her mother, Clarice, began to panic. Clarice called the police to report Lynn missing, but when she spoke to somebody at the police station, they told her not to worry. They tried to make it seem like Lynn possibly could have been out with a friend or even her boyfriend. They weren't taking her case seriously, even after her mother told them she had never done this and this was out of her character. Just like many other cases that we hear, the police classified her as a runaway. The next morning, when Clarice realized that Lynn still hadn't come home, she called her daughter, Lisa. Lisa says she remembers answering the phone and hearing the panic in her mother's voice. She was crying so hard it was hard to understand her. She remembers the words that her mother said, quote, "Lynn did not come home last night," end quote. Lisa says she'll always remember the numbness that she felt when she heard those words from her mother's voice. It was the first time that Lynn had never missed curfew. She always came home. Both her mother and her sister knew that something had to happen to her. After Lynn did not report home, her family went out every night searching for her. Detectives investigating the case put very little effort into her case, even though her family said many times to them this was out of character for her. Lynn's boyfriend Frank was involved in the search from the very start. The family would pick him up and they would ride around looking for Lynn. They would talk to people, hand out posters that had Lynn's information on it, and hoping to find someone that would lead them to Lynn. possibly someone who saw Lynn after her aunt did. A few days after her disappearance, the family received a phone call from the authorities letting them know that they had found Lynn's ring at a local pawn shop. A little fact about pawn shops is most shops require you to show some kind of ID. Meaning, if the police found the ring, it is possible that they also were able to find out who pawned the ring. But authorities have never confirmed this. There's also a possibility of where this ring was found that this pawn shop did not require identification, as some shops were known to do at the time. The family, however, does believe that Frank was the person who pawned the ring. After investigators found the ring, Frank began to act very differently towards the family. He would go out on searches with them every day, and after the ring was found, he stopped. He stopped talking to them, and soon after, he distanced himself altogether from the family. Frank was eventually interviewed by the police, and when interviewed, it consisted of investigators standing in front of Frank's door asking him a couple questions. Lynn's parents, who were outside watching the interview, said that the police only talked to him for about 5 minutes. Clearly, this wasn't an informal interview. The details of their conversation are unknown to the public still to this day. However, it has been reported that they have been described as being inconsistent with the facts that investigators had about Lynn's case. Lynn's family believed that her case wasn't given the attention it needed because of who she was, a black girl. They also believed that she didn't matter to police for the same reason. One example of this was when authorities had her family come down to the police station. Authorities called her family and made the family believe that they finally wanted to discuss Lynn's case. But when the family arrived at the station, police arrested her stepfather on an outstanding traffic ticket. Eventually, the family grew tired of waiting for answers and believed that they would possibly never come. The family moved to Pennsylvania, hoping that one day they would get answers of what happened to their daughter and to their sister. After living in Pennsylvania for many years, Lynn's mother and sister moved back to Arkansas in 2005. Their main focus was to get Lynn's case in the spotlight again. Lynn's sister, Lisa, began to investigate Frank. When she started to investigate him, she discovered that he had assaulted 2 other women, shooting at least one in her face. This resulted in Frank doing jail time. Lisa tracked down both of the women and both shared stories of abuse by the hands of Frank. Lisa transcribed the phone calls that she had with these women and handed them over to the police. Even though Lisa did not have a great relationship with the police based off of how they treated her family with her sister's disappearance, she still decided to do this because she thought any hope could lead to the arrest and what happened to her sister. Lisa said during the interview, quote, "We want to know what happened, and we want to, as well, have justice for her," end quote. In 2007, the family was given the chance to review Lynn's case, and while doing so, they noticed several inconsistencies. They also discovered that Frank, who was the last person to see Lynn, was never properly interviewed. In 2008, Lynn's case was reopened and classified for the first time as a murder case by the Hot Springs Police Department. Police said they did have a suspect, but it was not confirmed who it was. Until this day, those details have never been released. They also said that the suspect's statements were inconsistent with the facts that they had. This had made people think that Frank was the suspect that police were naming because Frank's statements also described as being inconsistent. The police did conduct multiple searches in wooded areas where Lynn's body possibly could have been, but they found nothing. The police put the family in touch with the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, who helped them with a age-progressed photo of Lynn. In December of 2010, police conducted a full cadaver dog search, but no remains were found. The area of focus were wooded areas. Jeffery Micah, the Hot Spring police sergeant, also said that once again they had a suspect, but they were not going into details of who the suspect was. In 2012, Lynn's case was reclassified as an endangered missing child case. Her case was assigned to Detective Lee Ann Clem, who is known as being a compassionate and hard-working officer. She reviewed Lynn's case, looking at every detail. She re-interviewed witnesses, even going to other states to interview other people. Detective Clem continued to work on Lynn's case until she was reassigned to another case. But Lynn's sister Lisa is hopeful that whoever takes on her sister's case next will continue to keep the case alive. Our family has started a tradition of handing out 16 Lynn bags to the homeless community. These bags include snacks, gloves, dental care, and snacks, and they also include a $5 bill and a picture of Lynn. Lisa spearheaded an app called Safety Central, which is an app that stores information about your child in the event that they go missing. Lisa volunteers with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Her main focus is to seek justice for her sister. She also has said that her family is at peace with the fate of Lynn. They believe that she is no longer alive. She also says that they forgive the person who took Lynn from them. Lisa's only wish is to bring her sister remains home so she can be finally put to rest. In an interview, Lisa said, quote, "I myself am 99.9% certain that she was murdered. We want to get her remains. We want to have answers. We hope to, at some point, know what happened, as painful as it might be." End quote. The family believed that Frank is responsible for Lynn's disappearance. But to date, there has never been no arrest in Lynn's case or anybody named a true suspect by the investigators investigating Lynn's case. If you know anything about the disappearance of Lynn Smith in 1985 or her whereabouts today, please call the Hot Spring Police Department at 501-321-6789. Lynn's case is one of those cases that could have been solved and should have been solved in the days, weeks, months, and even years after she went missing. I think it's outrageous that police did not do a formal interview with Frank, who wasn't just their boyfriend at the time, but also was the last person to see Lynn. Interviewing the last person to see someone who has either been murdered or even missing is so important. You're able to check the person off a list of possible suspects and move on to the next person who possibly could have been the real person. The original police failed Lynn's family over and over again. It was her sister Lisa who was doing what police should have done from the very start. She tracked down victims of Frank's and even transcribed these calls and handed them to police, even though she did not trust the police after the way her family was being treated. On that day that Lynn was walking home, she was so close to her house. And if Frank, in this theory, did not do anything to Lynn, what did he see? Did he see her talking to anybody after he'd parted ways? Did he see any cars? These are all questions that should have been asked by the investigators and should have been answered by Frank. With the police saying that they had a suspect who was given inconsistent statements to them, where are these inconsistencies coming from? What statements and what were they? Lisa, in my opinion, is an incredible person. She spent majority of her life, a good part of her life actually, working on solving her little sister's case. She did things that police should have been doing. You can also imagine that her main focus of working and volunteering with the Missing and Exploited Children Foundation all started because of her sister. Lynn had no history of being an, quote, bad kid, which police tried to express she was. She didn't miss curfew that her parents set for her. She didn't have any history of running away, as police tried to suggest to her family from the very start that she went missing. And this just makes it so clear that the police weren't taking her case serious and put little effort into her case because of the color of her skin, as sad as that is. This is a prime example of racial or systematic racism. Another thing that I find very interesting is that if Frank is the suspect that police named with the inconsistency statements, why wasn't he looked at after he was not only arrested but also served time in jail for assault on what is to believe an ex-girlfriend? You would think that if he was arrested for these crimes, someone would have noticed his name, his picture, something while he's being booked, and they would have connected the dots that he was also the last person to see a missing teenager who was also reportedly getting abused by him, or nonetheless, being in a relationship with him. The action of the police department working on Lynn's case also frustrates me and can also be another reason no one else came forward with any information or tips. Remember, Lynn's stepfather was arrested for a speeding ticket after the police made Lynn's family believe they wanted to discuss her case. Not only did you use their missing daughter to help you get to her stepfather, but you also was more concerned about a speeding ticket than a missing teenager. A teenager who never missed curfew, who never ran away, who got good grades in school and was respectful and was loved by everybody in her family. I hope with the new age of police, with the help of programs like Dateline and 2020 and even podcasts, Lynn's case can finally be put back in the limelight and finally be solved. I do believe that Lynn's case is solvable. To me and to a lot of people who know this case, and even to her family, it is very clear of who we all think is behind the disappearance of Lynn. I also agree with her family that Lynn is possibly not alive anymore. I can't find it plausible that this teenager who loved her family and her friends would disappear out the blue a couple minutes away from her home on a random day by her own choice. We will be posting important details. on our Instagram, which is linked in the description box below. After every episode, you can go over there and find information and pictures that are related to the case. That is also the best place to get in contact with us on new episodes or any updates that we discover on previous cases that we covered. Thank you for listening to Unheard Crimes. I'm your host, Nicole. Have a great week and stay safe, y'all.